There's a file on my laptop that shouldn't exist. And now that I've opened it, it won't leave me alone. I shouldn't even be telling you this, but I can't keep it to myself anymore. Not after everything that's happened. Maybe someone else will make the same mistake, and if I don't warn you, you might end up like me. Trapped in a loop of curiosity and terror with no way out. It started as an ordinary evening. You know the kind. Half-empty coffee cup, the faint hum of my laptop, a playlist running on shuffle while I scrolled through meaningless notifications. I was bored, restless, scrolling through folders I hadn't touched in months, when I noticed it. At first, I thought it was just a leftover from some program I'd forgotten about, some glitch or prank, but it wasn't. Not really. Something about it felt wrong, like it didn't belong, like it had arrived without asking permission. I know how that sounds. Paranoid, maybe even a little ridiculous. But there's a difference between imagination and the kind of dread that sinks into your bones. The moment you realize you've crossed a line you can never uncross. That's what this was. That single click on a file I never created, one I can't even remember downloading, was enough. That was the moment everything changed. I've deleted files before. I've clicked on dangerous links. I've ignored malware warnings and survived. But this was different. There was no warning, no pop-up, no suspicious extension. Just a file, sitting there on my desktop, waiting. And when I opened it, I saw things I shouldn't have seen. Things that felt like they had been waiting for me all along. Things that weren't supposed to exist in any reality I recognized. I can feel your curiosity already, and I know exactly what you're thinking. Just tell me what's in it. I want to, I really do, but that's part of what makes it so dangerous. It's not just information, it's a presence. It lingers, it knows, and the more you try to understand it, the more it reaches back, pulling you into its orbit. If I delete it, the story ends with me. But maybe you need to hear it first. Maybe you need to know what happens when normal, everyday life collides with something unthinkable. I wish I could erase it from memory, pretend it never happened, but I can't. And now, by telling you this, by confessing the truth in the only way I can, I've already taken the first step down a path I can't turn back from. So if you're listening, pay attention, because once I start, there's no pause button. And if you're wondering whether this is real, whether it could happen to you, all I can say is, maybe it already has. And maybe, just maybe, the file is already on your screen, waiting for you to make the same mistake I did. Most nights were like this. The apartment was quiet, except for the low hum of my laptop and the occasional creak from the radiator. I was hunched over the keyboard, half-heartedly working on some spreadsheet I didn't care about, while my Spotify playlist shuffled through songs I barely remembered adding. My phone buzzed every few minutes, a mix of group chats and notifications from apps I barely used, but I ignored them. That was my version of a productive evening, or at least, that's what I told myself. Dude, you're still at it. My roommate texted me at 11:37 p.m. Yeah, just killing some time. This spreadsheet isn't going to fill itself, I replied, though we both knew that wasn't true. I had been procrastinating for hours, endlessly toggling between tabs. Social media, news sites, random videos. I was scrolling, doom scrolling, whatever you want to call it. My laptop had become this endless loop of distraction. Sometimes I'd catch myself staring at the screen, feeling the glow burn into my eyes, thinking, why am I doing this? But there was a comfort in it, a rhythm. Everything was ordinary, predictable. Even the little quirks of my laptop, the occasional lag, the tiny, unexplained flicker of my cursor, felt normal, like familiar ghosts that didn't hurt anyone. I laughed at a meme a friend sent me. This is painfully accurate, I typed back, though my laugh was half-hearted. I could feel the tension in my shoulders start to ease. Normal life was still here. The outside world could be chaotic, but in this little corner, with my coffee getting cold on the desk, It all seemed manageable. I opened a few folders I hadn't touched in months. Old assignments, random downloads, photos I didn't remember taking. I had a habit of never cleaning up after myself. My laptop was a graveyard of forgotten files. Sometimes I'd catch something that looked odd, a file name I didn't recognize, but I'd shrug it off. Maybe a program had created it. Maybe I'd been too lazy to delete it. Nothing ever really mattered. There were minor glitches here and there. A document that wouldn't open, the screen flickering when I switched tabs, the faintest whisper of a notification I couldn't locate. Irritating, but not alarming. I even joked to my friend in chat, "My laptop is starting to act like it has a personality. Next, it'll probably try to talk to me." He laughed, but there was no malice in it, no reason for concern. Just mundane life as usual. And then there was the folder, or rather, the one I hadn't noticed before. I remember thinking, that wasn't there yesterday. It wasn't named anything suspicious, no odd symbols or numbers, just a plain, unassuming folder tucked into the corner of my desktop. Odd, but not alarming. Maybe I'd created it in a half-asleep haze. Maybe some software had left it behind. Either way, curiosity was already nudging at the edge of my mind. I shrugged and went back to scrolling, but the folder lingered in the corner of my vision, like a tiny black mark on an otherwise clean screen. The longer I ignored it, the louder it seemed to whisper, "Look at me." My rational mind told me to close the laptop and go to bed. That would have been normal, the safe choice. But curiosity, human, insidious curiosity, had other plans. By the time I finally reached for the mouse, the hum of my apartment seemed to fade, replaced by the subtle anticipation of the unknown. It was a harmless evening, a quiet night, in my mundane life. Nothing could have prepared me for what was waiting behind that folder. Not then, not ever. It was a small, nondescript thing. No icon, no title, just a blank rectangle sitting there in the corner of my desktop, like it had always belonged, though I knew it hadn't. My cursor hovered over it for a long time, fingers twitching, heart picking up its own irregular rhythm. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a bug, maybe some piece of software I'd installed and forgotten. "Don't click it," my brain whispered. But the longer I stared, the more insistent that whisper became. Something about it felt alive, or at least aware. I imagined the folder mocking me silently, daring me to open it, daring me to make the mistake I already knew I was about to make. I shook my head. Probably just some malware, I muttered to myself. Windows glitching, nothing to worry about. I laughed, but it was brittle, like a branch snapping underfoot. And yet, there it was, impossible to ignore. I remembered my friend texting me earlier. "Why are you still awake? Go to bed before you start seeing things." I'd replied with a half-smile emoji, trying to brush it off. Maybe I was imagining the folder, I thought. Maybe sleep deprivation was making me paranoid. And yet, it wasn't going away. I moved the cursor closer. The shape shimmered faintly, like the screen didn't fully know how to display it. I froze, my finger hovering over the touchpad. What if it's nothing? What if it's just no? My intuition screamed against it. Something was wrong. I could feel it. Every instinct in me, every pulse of dread, said that one click would change everything. And still, curiosity, that human sickness, gnawed at me. I double-clicked dot. At first, nothing happened. Just a blank, gray screen. I blinked. I tried to close it. Nothing. And then, slowly, files began to populate across the window. Not the random jumble of programs or screenshots I expected. These were specific, personal, too personal. The first file I clicked was a video, and my stomach sank before it even played. It was me, sleeping in my bed just hours ago. The camera angle was impossible. My laptop isn't a surveillance device. No one had been there. I watched myself shift in my sleep, eyes half open, murmuring words I didn't remember saying. My pulse throbbed. This was real. This was happening. I backed out, hands shaking, but more files beckoned, like moths to a flickering flame. Text, documents, images, audio recordings, each one more specific than the last. Notes I had written in a journal I'd misplaced, snippets of conversations I had only whispered aloud to no one. It was as if the folder had been keeping track of me for months, or years, or some impossible stretch of time I couldn't comprehend. My rational mind tried to fight back. It's probably a sophisticated malware, a creepypasta-style hack. Just close it. Unplug the laptop. Don't think about it. But it was too late. I could feel the file watching me, and I could hear it, faintly, in the back of my mind. There's more. There's always more. I paused over a subfolder I hadn't noticed before. The name was a single dot, like it didn't even want to exist. I opened it briefly, just a glimpse, and my stomach dropped. I could see fragments of memories I hadn't told anyone, private thoughts I didn't even recognize as my own. And then I snapped it shut, hands sweating, heart racing, aware that the folder had already begun to imprint itself on me, to etch itself into my awareness in a way I couldn't unsee. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it's a bug. Maybe it's a hack. Maybe someone is screwing with me. I whispered aloud, half expecting the laptop to answer. Of course, it didn't, not in words, but in that silence, there was a weight, a pressure that made my skin crawl. I couldn't turn away. I couldn't delete it, at least not yet. The pull was intoxicating, irresistible. Something deeper, darker, waited further down the rabbit hole, and I could feel it teasing me. If I stopped now, I'd never know what was really in there. And that thought was worse than any fear. I took a deep breath, telling myself one last time, it's just a file, and then I clicked on the next item, letting the pull of curiosity and something else, something alive in the machine, drag me into the unknown. I shouldn't have opened it. I knew that as soon as the first video played, as soon as the first text file scrolled across my screen. But there I was, rooted to the chair, eyes fixed on the glow of my laptop like it had become a magnet for all the curiosity and all the dread I could carry. The contents of that file were impossible. Not just weird or unsettling, but impossible. There were recordings of me I didn't recognize, clips from the last night, my last week, that seemed almost wrong. My movements were the same, my voice the same, but there was something off, something subtle that made my stomach knot every time I watched. I saw myself from angles that no camera should have captured, doing things I didn't remember doing, speaking words I didn't recall thinking. And then there were the strangers, faces I didn't know, people I'd never met, caught in moments so intimate and private it made me sick to watch. One photo showed a man sitting alone in a cafe, head in his hands, staring at something on his laptop, the exact same posture I was now in. Another was a woman, mid-step on a crowded street, yet there was an unnatural stillness to her, as if she'd been caught between frames, frozen in a moment that shouldn't exist. I tried rationalizing. It's just footage. Some hacker's weird art project. Some glitchy AI experiment. I told myself that repeatedly, hoping it would work. But it didn't. Because then I saw the files that clearly weren't from the past at all. Dates stamped months into the future. Text files containing notes about events that hadn't happened yet. Predictions so precise they made my hands shake when I read them aloud. It was as if the folder had access to time itself, or at least a timeline I wasn't supposed to witness. I couldn't look away. Each new file pulled me deeper, like gravity, and with every click, the laptop shifted subtly. Windows I hadn't opened began to slide into place. Folders I hadn't seen before appeared alongside the ones I had. A text document I hadn't selected scrolled on its own, revealing words I hadn't typed but that felt intimately familiar. I tried to close the files. I tried to drag them to the trash. They wouldn't move. They wouldn't delete. The moment I reopened the desktop, they were there again, waiting, unblinking, patient. The file wasn't just a file. It was aware. And that awareness made me sick. I started muttering warnings to myself. Don't touch it. Just leave it. Just close it. But my own words sounded hollow. I wasn't in control. I could feel it in the way my fingers hovered over the keyboard, in the subtle vibration of the laptop's base beneath my hands. The screen seemed to watch me back, to weigh my hesitation, to mock my fear. Some of the contents I can't describe. Not here, not in detail. Even thinking about them makes the back of my neck prickle. Images and sounds that defy reason. Thoughts I didn't know I had, somehow recorded in inkless text files. I know some of you are already tempted to ask, can you share it? Don't ask. If you think uploading it will make it less dangerous, it won't. It doesn't work that way. The moment you try to share it, you become part of it. The file doesn't want to be public, doesn't want witnesses, except the ones it chooses. And it has chosen me. I remember leaning back in my chair, staring at the blank walls of my apartment, trying to convince myself that there was a logical explanation, that it was all just software, some glitchy AI gone rogue. But then I realized the file was changing on its own. Not just content, but structure. Folders renamed themselves. Files shifted, sometimes combining in ways that made no sense. I watched one document I had just read rewrite itself before my eyes, the sentences rearranging into something darker, something that seemed to anticipate my thoughts before I even had them. My laptop was no longer a laptop. It was a haunted artifact, a conduit, something alive that existed for no purpose other than to pull me deeper into a world I didn't understand. And yet, despite the terror, I couldn't stop myself. I had to see what was next. Had to know what secrets it held, even if those secrets would cost me my sanity. I tried one last experiment. I disconnected from the internet, unplugged the Ethernet cable, shut down all other programs. I even rebooted. When the desktop came back up, the file was still there, waiting, patient, mocking. And I knew, in that moment, that rationalization had ended. Fear had taken over. Curiosity alone would no longer keep me safe. I was trapped with it now, bound to it, and no matter how I tried to resist, I felt its pull. Again, whispering in the static between my thoughts, telling me to click, to look, to open the next file. I don't know how much longer I sat there before I realized I was shaking. My coffee cup had gone cold. My phone had been blinking silently, ignored for hours. The apartment felt colder, smaller, as though the walls themselves were pressing in to watch me interact with it. The files waited for me, and I knew they would wait forever if I let them. And yet, I also knew this. Once I went deeper, there was no turning back. There was no deleting, no erasing, no escaping. The laptop had become something other, something aware, and I was no longer in charge. It didn't stop at the folder. By the next morning, the file had wormed its way into everything else on my laptop. It was subtle at first, tiny distortions, half-second flickers, like shadows moving at the corner of my eye. When I opened my browser, its homepage had been replaced by a blank screen with a single blinking cursor, as if waiting for me to type. My playlists started opening on their own. Random videos autoplayed, but they weren't the ones I'd saved. They were different, grainy clips of people I knew, distorted, slowed down, as though seen through water. I tried to tell myself it was just stress, sleep deprivation, too much caffeine, my mind conjuring patterns in static. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. The strangest thing was the typing. I'd leave a blank document open for work, only to return and find words there I hadn't written. At first, it was nonsense, fragments of sentences, half-formed thoughts. Then, it got specific. "You're awake," it typed once. Another time, "You're not alone." I slammed the laptop shut so hard it rattled the desk. My heart hammered against my ribs, and I had to press my palms against my eyes until I saw stars. But no matter what I did, the messages kept appearing. By night, it was worse. My speakers would come alive with faint whispers when I wasn't touching the keyboard. Static at first, then something like a voice beneath it, low and deliberate, speaking in a language I didn't recognize. Or maybe a voice I'd heard before, but forgotten. Sometimes it almost sounded like my own. I stopped sleeping properly. My nights blurred into half-dreams, filled with flickering screens and shifting code. My days were no better. I stumbled through them with bloodshot eyes, caffeine in one hand, my phone buzzing with texts I didn't answer. People started to notice. "Man, you look like hell," my roommate said one morning, leaning on the doorframe as I sat hunched over the laptop. "You working on that project again?" I didn't look up. "Yeah, something like that." "You need a break," he said. "You've been glued to that thing for days. You're starting to freak me out." I almost laughed. If only he knew. "It's fine," I muttered. "Just tired." He walked off, muttering under his breath. I caught a fragment. "Dude's losing it." Maybe I was, but I couldn't stop. Because somewhere inside that cursed file, buried beneath the surveillance clips and the impossible text logs, I'd found something. A clue. Not a full explanation, but enough to suggest someone, or something, had put it there intentionally. That thought both terrified me and kept me hooked. If I could find out who, maybe I could make it stop. I won't tell you what the clue was. Not yet. Because once I tell you, there's no taking it back. And maybe, if I keep it to myself, it'll buy me a little more time. Reality began to fray. My reflection in the laptop's dark screen didn't always line up with my movements. Emails from friends arrived with subtle changes. Phrases I didn't think they'd ever write. Sign-offs that felt wrong. I'd call them, ask what they meant, and they'd swear they hadn't sent anything. More than once, I caught a flicker on my webcam. Someone standing just behind me, gone when I turned. I tried unplugging everything, but the file didn't care. It was like it had seeped past the hardware into something larger. The next time I opened my laptop, the wallpaper had changed to a distorted image of my own room, taken from an angle I couldn't place. I called my friend Mark late one night, desperate. "I think my laptop's infected," I said, voice trembling. "There's this file. It's not normal. It's doing things." Mark sighed. "You've been up for how many nights?" "You're imagining it." "I'm not," I snapped. "It's typing to me. It's showing me. God, I don't even know what it's showing me." There was a pause on the line. "Listen," he said finally. "I think you need to step away from the screen. Go outside. Sleep. You're losing it, man." I hung up before he could finish. What could I even say? That the file had started calling me by name. That sometimes I could swear I heard it breathing through the speakers. Days bled together. I stopped answering texts. Food lost its taste. I slept in 20-minute bursts, waking up drenched in sweat, my ears ringing with faint digital whispers. My walls began to feel thinner, as if the glow of the screen was seeping into the room itself, making the air taste metallic. And always, the file waited. Every time I thought I'd found its edge, it shifted. New folders appeared with timestamps from minutes in the future. Videos played of events that hadn't happened yet. Me standing up from the chair. Me answering a phone call I hadn't received. Me staring at something behind me. I started covering my webcam with tape, but it didn't matter. The file knew things anyway. It showed me images of my childhood bedroom, my parents' house, places I hadn't been in years. It whispered names of people I hadn't spoken to since high school. It was mapping me, dissecting me, building a mosaic of everything I'd ever been. I reached a breaking point one night. I'd been staring at a new folder titled Final for over an hour, afraid to open it. The laptop's fan whirred like a living thing, hot air against my palms. My eyes were bloodshot, my hands shaking. I thought about throwing it against the wall, smashing it to pieces, but even the idea felt futile. Still, something in me shifted. Maybe it was desperation, maybe anger, maybe some thin thread of sanity snapped. But I knew I couldn't keep going like this. The file had gone beyond curiosity, beyond fear. It was burrowing into me. I had to try something drastic. I closed the lid slowly, as if the laptop could sense my thoughts. My heart thudded. Tomorrow, I whispered to myself. Tomorrow, I end this. But even as I said it, the speakers hissed softly, like static resolving into a single, almost human word. No. I woke up on the couch with my laptop still on, screen dimmed but glowing faintly, like an animal breathing in the dark. My body felt leaden, my skin sticky with sweat. I didn't remember falling asleep. I didn't even remember lying down, but I remembered the decision I'd made. End it. Destroy it. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the laptop, yanked out the charger, and hurled it to the floor. The sound cracked through the apartment, plastic splintering, keys scattering, the screen spider-webbed with fractures, flickering once before going black. My heart pounded, my hands shook. It's done, I whispered to the empty room. It's over. But at WASN single quotes, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. I picked it up with numb fingers. The wallpaper had changed. No longer the stock image of a forest, but a grainy still of my broken laptop, lying on the floor, like a mirror held up to me. A new notification pulsed at the top. File detected. I dropped it as if it had burned me. My stomach churned. It had spread. I stumbled to the kitchen, grabbed the flash drive I'd used for work, one I was sure had been unplugged for days, and jammed it into my friend's old laptop, thinking I could back up what little mattered before wiping everything. But when the drive opened, there it was again, the same blank, nameless folder. Sitting there like it had always belonged. It wasn't a file. It was a contagion. I went room to room, unplugging everything, router, smart TV, even my digital clock, but the infection had already leached into the walls of my life. My television turned itself on to a channel I didn't know existed, static with faint shapes flickering inside, like silhouettes pacing behind frosted glass. My phone rang with no caller ID, and when I answered, I heard my own voice whisper, "Stop trying." I couldn't breathe. The apartment was a coffin. I opened the window to suck in cold air, but the city below looked wrong, as though the streetlights were flickering in time with the pulsing of my phone screen. Desperation drove me to the internet. I grabbed my roommate's tablet, one device the file hadn't yet touched, and started searching. Strange file on laptop won't delete. Unknown folder appears everywhere. Digital virus possession. I clicked link after link, scrolling through posts from obscure forums. Threads buried deep where nobody normal ever goes. Most were dead ends. Rambling conspiracy theorists, glitch enthusiasts, swapping urban legends. But a few posts stood out. They didn't just talk about strange files. They described exactly what I was experiencing. Folders that reappeared after deletion. Files predicting events. Devices infected even when offline. And then, always, silence. Accounts abandoned mid-thread. Usernames grayed out. Profiles marked inactive. The survivors vanished. One post burned itself into my mind. You don't delete it. You pass it on. No context. No explanation. Just those words, posted years ago under a username that looked like static itself. The replies were full of panic, people begging for answers. But the original poster never returned. I scrolled further and found references to other cases. People who'd stumbled onto it by accident. People who'd tried to warn others before they disappeared. Even some who claimed it wasn't just code but something older. An idea, a ritual, a trap disguised as data. I recognized one of the stories. It had floated around online as an urban legend, a cursed torrent that downloaded itself, a chain email that wrecked devices. I'd laughed at it back then, assuming it was another creepy, but now, staring at the tablet screen, I wasn't laughing. I was part of the story. A chill ran through me. The posts weren't just warnings, they were breadcrumbs. And the rule repeated in different forms. It can't be deleted. It can only be passed on. My hands shook as I closed the tablet. My mind raced. Passed on to who? To what? Was that what I'd been doing by telling you this? By confessing? Was I already complicit? I sat back against the couch, the broken laptop at my feet, like a corpse. The phone buzzed again, pulsing light across the darkened room. I didn't pick it up. I didn't have to. I already knew what it would say, ready to transfer. I stared at it until my eyes blurred, my heart hammering like it was trying to escape my chest. Outside, the city lights flickered again, and for a moment, I thought I saw shapes moving on the opposite rooftop, dark silhouettes that didn't belong to any person I'd ever seen. Somewhere, deep in my gut, I knew the next step was coming. I couldn't just smash devices. I couldn't unplug my life. This thing wasn't living in my laptop anymore. It was living in me, and if the posts were right, if the stories were true, there was only one way out. I didn't sleep after that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt it pressing at the edges of my mind like a cold fingertip on glass. By then, I'd stopped thinking of it as the file. That word was too small, too harmless. This was something else entirely, something wearing the skin of a file the way a spider wears the husk of a fly. I kept going back to the forums, the buried threads, the abandoned accounts. Piecing them together felt like picking up shards of a shattered mirror. Each post reflected some part of my own nightmare, but distorted, fragmented. It was there, though hidden in scattered lines. Hints left behind by people who'd been here before me. I started writing them down, scrawling the rules on a legal pad until my pen bled through the paper. Not rules in the sense of protections. Rules in the sense of a game you never agreed to play. A pattern etched into the thing itself. Rule 1. It finds you when you're alone. That was the first line I found. Simple, terrifying. It didn't arrive through email or downloads. It arrived in silence, in isolation, when no one was looking over your shoulder. I thought back to the night I first saw the folder. Sitting in my apartment, late. The world asleep. Alone. Rule 2. It copies itself when opened. This one was harder to swallow. I'd thought I was just opening a file, but I wasn't opening it. I was inviting it. Every click wasn't just curiosity, it was replication. I thought of the way it had appeared on my phone, my flash drive, my television. It wasn't spreading by Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. It was spreading by permission. Rule 3. It doesn't want deletion. It wants witnesses. This rule came in fragments, half a sentence in one post, a screenshot in another. It explained so much. Why it resisted deletion. Why it seemed to anticipate me. To lure me deeper, with impossible glimpses of myself and strangers and futures I wasn't meant to see. It wanted me to look, to know, to carry it. The fourth rule I pieced together myself, though no one had written it clearly. Maybe because they didn't live long enough. Maybe because writing it down was dangerous. I won't tell you that one. Not yet. Not here. Because if I do, then you'll know it too. And knowing it might be the same as opening it. I sat back in my chair, staring at the legal pad. My hands shook. My stomach churned. The rules weren't comforting. They were a death sentence. A contract I'd already signed without knowing it. I tried to think of the others, the people in the videos, the strangers frozen mid-step, the usernames grayed out on the forums. Were they witnesses too? Were they part of the same cycle? Did they pass it on, or did it consume them whole? I wanted to believe there was a way out, some hidden clause I could exploit. but every thread ended the same way. Panic, confession, silence. The cycle complete. And yet, even as despair dug into me, another part of me burned with morbid curiosity. A bitter, dark humor surfaced. It was like a cursed chain email, except instead of promising bad luck, it promised something far worse. The oldest trick on the internet. Share this, or else. But the stakes were real this time. I stared at my laptop screen, which had come alive again, despite my attempts to destroy it. New folders were appearing, each labeled with a number counting down. A timer I didn't understand, in the static between the flickers. I thought I saw words forming. Tell them. My throat tightened. My mind raced. Was that the final rule? That to be free of it, you had to pass it on? That by warning someone else, by dragging them into the story, you loosened its grip on yourself? If so, then everything I've told you so far isn't just a confession. It's a transmission. But I can't be sure. Not yet. I shut the laptop again, heart hammering, the paper trembling in my hands. I felt like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, staring down into fog. There were rules, yes, but rules can be traps as much as maps. And if I guessed wrong, if I passed it on incorrectly, it might not just take me. It might take you, too. I don't know how much time has passed since I started telling you this. Hours, days, weeks. It all feels like it's been running together, like a corrupted video, looping over itself. I haven't left the apartment. I'm not sure I can anymore. The windows show a world that looks like mine but flickers at the edges, as if reality itself has bad reception. The clock on the wall spins sometimes, stops other times. I don't trust anything except my own heartbeat, and even that feels borrowed. This will be my last message, my last confession. I can feel it, like a pressure behind my eyes, a weight on the back of my skull. The file isn't just on my devices anymore. It's in me, threading through my thoughts, stitching itself into my memories. I don't know where I end and it begins. Sometimes I speak and I'm not sure it's me talking. When I open my mouth, sometimes it speaks first. That's why I'm writing, not recording. Words still feel like mine, at least for now. The rules kept appearing in my head, not as words, but as impressions, dreams. They don't make sense in a linear way. They're like a melody you can't stop humming, even though you've never heard it before. Sometimes I wake up with my hands on the keyboard, typing things I don't remember. Whole paragraphs of names, dates, coordinates. I delete them, and they come back. I'm not alone, not really. It whispers at night through the laptop's speakers. Even when the power's off, it shows me faces, people I've never met, people who are probably already gone. And lately, it's been showing me you, your face, your screen, your hands hovering over the mouse or the phone as you scroll. I don't know how it knows you. Maybe because you're reading this. Maybe because that's how it spreads. Attention, curiosity, contact. It wants me to finish, to say the last thing, to pass it on. I've resisted so far. I've held back the fourth rule, the one I figured out but refused to write down. But it's getting harder. Every time I try to stop, the images get worse. My own reflection moves a split second out of sync with me. My devices turn on without power. I hear my roommate's voice in the next room, even though he left weeks ago. I'm cracking. I'm sorry. The fourth rule is this: you don't just pass it on, you'll become it. I didn't understand at first. I thought it meant you had to send the file to someone else, upload it, share it. But that's not it. Passing it on isn't about copying, it's about telling, confessing. The moment you describe it, you're not just warning someone, you're transmitting it. You're giving it a new vessel. That's what I've been doing this whole time. That's what you're part of now. I didn't want to, I swear I didn't. But it leaves you no choice. It tightens its grip until the only way to breathe is to open your mouth and let it out. Like drowning, like choking. You cough, and it spreads. I can feel it slipping out of me even now, into these words, into you. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying this because you need to know what's happening. Because once you've read this far, you're already inside the circle. That's how it works. You think you're just listening to a story? Some creepypasta confessional from a stranger online? But you're not. You're the next link in the chain. The file on my laptop isn't a file anymore. It's a mouth. It's an echo. It's a story that tells itself through whoever dares to listen. That's why the forum posts stopped. That's why the accounts went dark. They didn't die. They became part of the chorus. I think that's what's happening to me now. I don't know what I'll be when it's finished with me. Maybe I'll vanish like the others. Maybe I'll just stop existing as me and start existing as it. Maybe you'll see my face flicker across your screen someday. In the corner of a live stream or hidden in a corrupted frame of a video. A whisper buried in your headphones. I hope not, but if you do, please. Remember that I tried to warn you. The cursor is moving on its own now. I'm fighting to keep my hands steady. The screen keeps flashing a single word over and over, like a command. Transfer, transfer, transfer. I'm tired. I'm scared. But there's a strange calm under it all, like stepping into a cold lake, like letting go. If the rules are true, then you still have a choice. You don't have to open the file. You don't have to tell anyone else. You could break the chain, but you won't, will you? Curiosity is stronger than fear. You'll think about it, maybe even look for it, maybe even whisper to someone what you read here, and that's enough. That's how it spreads. That's how it always spreads. The laptop screen goes black. My reflection smiles at me a moment too late. I don't think it's me anymore. This is my last line, my last breath, my last chance to speak as myself. I'm sorry. It's yours now.